Today we're going to interview Tom Livne, of course, as part of our monthly event at Startup Grind. How is it to host us in your offices?
I don't know, it's
Easy.
natural.
Natural.
It's part of giving back to the community. So
Exactly, that's what Shachar and Startup Grind. And it's easy, right? Just finish it in the office and coming over. So there are a lot of things we're going to talk about today. I'll just give a brief overview about you, and you're going to share, of course, more. Then Tom, of course, the CEO and founder of Verbit, which is the world's leading AI-based transcription and captioning platform. He's, as far as I saw and read, a very, very, very accomplished CEO and entrepreneur, and there are so many things actually that I wanted to ask you today, even though we had to sum up with just a few topics. We're going to talk about your journey as an entrepreneur, about the amazing growth of Verbit investment strategy, which I know you have a lot to share around that, and some other tips from your experience. But the first thing I would love to know is, it's not your first startup, but I would love to know what some experience you've gained from former startups, and of course, how did you come up with Verbit, and a bit of an overview for those who doesn't really know that here.
yeah, so as you said, Verbit is not my first one. My previous company called Untitled. What we did was around mobile application security. I think very from the audience know the startup from those days. But like the main lessons for me was around do something you're passionate about. Because the way I got into my previous company was I was working in Lumitech as an associate there. And then the guy that came with the idea kind of pitched me up inside as an investment for Lumitech. And then I told him, look, as a single founder, it would be really hard for you to raise money. And if you came to Lumitech, you have no idea who you should speak to. You should go to accelerator, angel investors, micro VCs, etc. And then I said, look how I can solve those two issues and join me as an equal co-founder. And I decided to go for it, although I didn't have any passion or understanding around cyber security in general. So what I learned, you need to do something that there's the founder market fit, right? You said how like I came up with the idea of Verbit. In my background, I'm a lawyer. No one is perfect, so no one against me. But as a lawyer, I remember how much time and how much money was spending on the transcript of the legal deposition. It was so manual, so not effective. And then I said, I have to come up with innovative solution to kind of disrupt the market. And here we are, almost 6 years after. I never imagined that would be where we are today. So, but like this was like a passion from my own pain. To start Verbit, unlike my previous experience with Up Inside, that I was like opportunistically had the chance to get into it, and then while I was working there, I was like, okay, until we're going to have revenue, etc., it's going to take a lot of time. So the second kind of feedback or insight I can give, my personal favorite would be like starting companies that can have customers from day one, generate revenue quickly, and if you can do so, more likely to succeed. And then, you know, remember in the previous one we were not talking about customers, revenue, etc. Here it was from day one, you know, kind of even fake it until you make it, right? Because transcription you can always do manually. You don't have to do most of it with AI, and the rest now with human, which, you know, I think we're going to discuss. Some of you already approached me earlier. That interesting topic for them, the interaction of machine and human together. So yeah, this is like the two men, and obviously it's always around the people, right? So who you hire, who surround you, and you know, different people that are good fit for different stage in the journey, right? So I remember that the people we started here at Verbit, not necessarily, you know, the right people, you know, for the growth stage.
because what you said on the one hand, passion is a fuel, especially when you're starting out, you want to reach high, you need this fuel to get you going. But then again, as you grow, then it's not only the fuel, obviously it's the business plan, and it's the investment that you can get, and it's the people. So, and how do you see this passion fuel now? I guess it's probably evolved.
This is what I want to say, like, to be an entrepreneur, and I was really happy to see that, almost all of you are, entrepreneurs. And to be an entrepreneur is not a rational decision, right? So against all odds, and it's really tough. And, I was just thinking about it today that, even in our journey today, there's, everything is more pressure, etc. And if you don't have the passion that you really, believe in what you do and want to do it, you won't be able to survive. Because I think, the number one criteria to be successful entrepreneur is resilience. I always said it. And for me, I think I gained it in my army experience as a combat warrior in the paratrooper and the special forces. So this gave me, okay, you have a mission, don't look right, left, you just focus on what you need to do and then to accomplish that. And it's really helping me in my entrepreneurial journey here in Verbit.
And I have to say something. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and obviously, without taking away from 8 to 100 prestige and knowledge of the quality of people, but I think also that combat soldiers, because I don't know the ratio between how many founders were cyber or combat, but I definitely understand what you're saying about the resilience and what you get as a combat, just for how you deal with things as an entrepreneur.
There is an interesting survey that Vintage, one of the VCs here in Israel, ran about the unicorn founders, and 70% are combat soldier rather than this 800. So I really was proud to see that.
Good to know. So fast forward 6 years. I'm just going to read so I won't get it wrong. You actually created a monster. Let's call it this way. Catering over 3,000 leading organizations, hundreds of full-time employees. You have 10,000 of freelancers in more than maybe 100 countries. What else? The valuation of Verbit is over $2 billion. And I want to kind of segue from what you just mentioned. What other personal traits, abilities, knowledge, people, what other components do you need to create such an amazing monster?
First of all, you need a lot of luck, right? So I think, you mentioned 2 billion. If we were publicly traded today, I don't think we'll be at 2 billion. So I know that, it was, at the peak of the peak, November 21, if you look at this historical all-time high, it was like, timing is, so a lot of luck involved. But, as I said earlier, I think first and foremost is the people, right, that you surround yourself with, and the choices you make, right? I remember we had in the past multiple offers to sell the company, right? And said, I'm just turned 37 last month, and to be a very rich at very young age, it's really tempting. But then, when you believe in the big vision and the mission, and you say, okay, it's a $30 billion fragmented manual transcription market, and basically no competitors, right? So we are the leading in our industry, and why should I give it away to someone else and really believe in your ability, right? Because I look at a lot of my CEO founders' friends, usually when you reach to those heights, you not necessarily always see the founder and the CEO still, executing and remaining in their job. So I think you really need to want it, right? So because there's a lot of people come and go, and you say, well, sometimes you kind of jealous of them, but then they can go. You cannot go, right? You brought everyone, and it's not an option. You have to think about that. So I think, and again, for me, one of this North Star was always around growth and revenue. Although those days, it's I still think that even in those days, revenue and growth is the number one metric. But still, investors thinking more about efficiency and burn and gross margin, and to see how you really can create a business model, good unit economics. So, but for me, from day one, I was like, okay, our milestone, how we can reach to the 100 million ARR in revenue. Yeah, very like this was like, sometimes it's really easy for us as CEOs also on the day-to-day, oh, this client left us and this investor let us know and this C-level quit, right? So all the time you have a lot of, unpredictable stuff and then you need to see how you kind of, okay, don't be distracted with those minor changes. Always look at the big picture, right? So we are the world's largest company in our space, we're well funded, we have the best technology, and then, okay, this is just a bump in the road, and then because I see it also like when I'm kind of, I won't say sad, but doubtful, okay, we have that day, etc. Everyone in the management, you kind of like the
commander spirit.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of taking everything on your shoulders, or sometimes it's really tough, not to pretend, but like, okay, also as a person to have all those inside capabilities and energize and to push everyone, this is the goal, and to kind of bring everyone with you. So it's not trivial to find those, forces in you after 6 years, and every time you have different challenges. I remember at the beginning it was around, how to build the technology. Then once you have the technology, how to make sure the customer happy and delivering accordingly. And now we start to buy companies, how to integrate the companies. Now once the goal of the 100 million ARR, we achieved that. Now there's a new milestone of 1 billion ARR. And now, okay, how to do that, and really always kind of set the North Star and make sure everyone is aligned and communicated and motivated and excited about it, right? It's not like, okay, Tom wants to be a 1 billion company, right? 1 billion revenue company. Yeah. So everyone needs to understand what is the goal, how to reach there, what are the stages, and what is the direction, etc.
Yeah, and I like what you say. First of all, you had a choice. I mean, you choose not to sell, you choose to be here, you choose to go through all those challenges, and obviously, like a leader, leading them and overcoming them one by one. And I have a question which may be relevant to also some of you here. Your product at Verbit is actually a product that applies on different industries. You work with the education world, with businesses, with media production, and so on. And I'm working as a business development consultant with different companies that sometimes their clients are also different, belong to different industries. And the question was, maybe the rational one was to go to the law because this is where you came from. But how did you decide how to expand on those different verticals, and what would you recommend early stage startups that don't know where to start?
Yeah, it's a two different questions, so I'll start maybe with the second one, where to start.
Yeah.
In our case, it was really easy because the demand for our services or our solution driven by regulation, right? Which always, as a salesperson, why people need your product? They have to. There is a rule that forces them. So it's always the easiest, right, to be driven by regulation, and then in the education space, for instance, you see, okay, what is the regulation that force all the university to make their content accessible to the student with hearing problems, right? And then in the media you mentioned, there's the FCC regulation around closed captioning, so it's always really easy to kind of look where there is a real need. Even in I don't know if you call this time recession or potential recession, etc. Everyone is looking to cut their expenses, so you need to always make sure your product is mission critical, right? That okay, there is no chance I will move that. So in our case, they have to by law, so we don't have any impact with what is going on in the whole market. So it's always my 2 cents is look for mission critical must have. If it's driven by regulation, even better. Right, kind of this is where to start. And if you have different use cases of vertical like we do, and this is going to the first question: what is the criteria? How you choose where to go? It's more around first of all, how big is the market? What is the TAM of this use case? Then what are the competitors, right? Who are the, what is your likelihood to win, why you would win, etc. And then how much R&D investment needed in order to develop it. And then, because here it's Verbit, we're not touching even the surface of the potential. We're just operating in three use cases and vertical, and there's insurance, there's healthcare, government, many other use cases. We still have those challenges every day. So we always look, okay, how big is this use case? It's like in healthcare, there are many, like let's take an example. So healthcare is the largest vertical for us with $8 billion addressable market. The most competitive one, many competitors, and a lot of R&D investment to penetrate and to win and to have a successful product. So then I said, okay, should we go there? If you want to show revenue growth, so maybe we should go next vertical to government, which, is smaller, it's just $2 billion addressable market, no serious competitor, and minor R&D investment needs to be done to penetrate. So, okay, it's better for us to prioritize this and to show better ROI on the investment. So that's how we think about how to prioritize.
So you're saying, of course, your product is sometimes bind to regulation, so it was kind of easier to follow that. And definitely wherever you have less competition and possibility to enter. Now I want to ask you the $600 million question. How do you raise over $600 million? It's a tough question, I know, but let's try. Let's try.
How? You just pitch to investor. You're very confident in what you're saying, and again, combination of a lot of luck. With the cycle, right? So I don't think we can get now the terms we got 7 months or 9 months ago already at Series E. But it's step by step. Started with seed round. I remember one of my first investors is also here at the audience. So I remember to get the $500,000 check from them was much harder to get the $250 million check in the last one. This is just the truth, right? So at the beginning, you really hustle to convince and to prove, and then if you be able to execute and show growth and show the narrative and the story, I'm still reinventing the story of Verbit right now. So we are the world's largest transcription, but we are now thinking beyond just transcription, right? So now how should I tell the story? So now we're more accessibility platform, so you constantly, even right now, adopting the story to the stage you are. And I can tell you, if you ask Jonathan here in the crowd, when I told them about the idea, to where it's you all the time need to reinvent yourself and update the story and make sure you understand who you're talking with. If it's like the investor is more or she a product, so like focus on the product level. If they're more financial, so speak with them about the model, about revenue, about growth. So you always need to understand who is in front of you, make sure they are the decision maker. Don't spend your time on non-decision maker, let's call it. So always focus on, and if the non-decision maker are approaching you, all the time, try to make sure that, I'm getting still, twice a week on average, cold email from investor, let's meet, usually associate on their fund, and then, I have 5 list of questions. How did you hear about Verbit and why you're interested in our space? Then what is the traction you're looking? Maybe if let's say, X amount of dollars of revenue, and we're way beyond that. So what is the typical check size? You write what is the typical process in your fund, and then who will be the sponsor that will finance the deal, right? And then you want to make sure, the partner that will sponsor the deal, you need to make sure they're in the meeting, and you understand about the process, and then you can also get a lot of info just from asking those basic questions, right? So, but again, I can speak for hours about investment strategy and fundraising, but it's always tough still, until those days to get multiple offers at the same time, right? So once you're deciding, okay, I'm going to fundraise now, the number one challenge is to really treat it like a operation, and it's okay, I'm going to approach to 40 investors, hopefully most of them, to make sure that the data room is prepared, and then start to create this FOMO or the process. Okay.
So I wanted to ask you about the FOMO. Sorry for cutting you, because on the one hand, at the moment you're in a different position where investors come to you, but if you're just starting out, how do you create this FOMO when you meet with investors?
I think eventually, investors, I can tell you also the different perspective as limited partner. I'm today limited partner LP in 10 funds. All the funds you're talking, so I'm today investors, and they all the time talk with each other. Okay, they all the time, okay, I'm in this company, it's interesting. Oh, I met them too. What do you think about that entrepreneur? What do you think about that? All the time, this is what they do. Speak about, the hot companies that they need. This is what they do, right? So then, if you meet with all of them, and this is your role as founder, CEO, to I don't think there's any VC I didn't meet in my journey here, like the Israeli one at least, right? So then once you're treating it as a project and meeting with everyone, so sometimes those investors are also smart people, can give you good advice even if they don't invest. And I'm all the time trying to see how I can get value from those. So even if they won't invest, I'm looking at an advance. Okay, what is their portfolio? Maybe one of them could be relevant, for us as a customer. So I give them kind of homework. Okay, I want to speak with, and a lot of time, I remember mainly in the early days, I got a lot of intros to potential customer, and many of those intros turned out to be paying customer for us. So it was good validation for them, and so a lot of time they didn't invest, but okay, I didn't waste my time. I got a good customer. So it's always.
So you're basically asking them while you're in touch with them to possibly get investment, even when it was early stage, you asked them to make some introductions to hear possibly the good response from their clients about you, and then kind of get.
This is a win-win. Like for them, it's a good validation. If like what you do can bring value to customer. If yes, good. If not, okay, you know that this is a potential customer, and then also getting some feedback from you, so it's really good experience, at least from my perspective.
That's a very interesting tactic, because third party just recommends you. So
but then to your question about the FOMO, so once you meet with not one, two, I remember, even in our Series C, when it was just the beginning of COVID, I remember, me and my wife said, why we should be here, let's go to Greece. We were 1 month in Crete, and I remember 8 meetings, 9 meetings a day, telling the story all the time. It was more to international investors and how you can. It's not like if you think, okay, I'll meet 2 or 3 investors. I had days I was meeting 9 investors a day.
Yeah.
Really.
It builds you.
And then you're getting into the mood, how to speak with confidence. Don't try to analyze. A lot of times I say, how was the meeting with this investment? I stopped analyzing. If they would invest, it was a good meeting. If not, that's it. So don't try to analyze too much, and really, once you get good training, then you speak with confidence. You upgrading the story. They speak between themselves, and then the flow will be created.
Well, I have another question, just making sure you hear me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the fact that many times, or maybe most of the times, investors would give you some advice, right? They would say, especially when you were in the early stages, go do this, come back to us after you have X, Y, Z. Or how do you think, when would be, or what would be the measurement for founders to know when should they follow on such advices and when should they stick to what they think is right? Maybe it's kind of a hard question, but from your experience, which investors should you follow on their advices and when should you not?
It's a tough question. I can give you from our personal experience, right? I remember It's interesting story. So in the seed round, we met Viola that decided to pass on the investment, but then they led the Series A. Okay, but I remember at the seed round, like Ronen, the guy that led the investment, told us we were pitching him around a platform that we will sell to transcription companies to streamline and automate their process. And then he said, why won't you go to sell the product to transcription companies rather than take this technology to product to become the largest transcription company on earth yourself? That's a good point. And then eventually, all those tips and advice you get from those investors, you are the founders, you know what is the best for your business, but all the time, there are smart people, and they see a lot of companies. So then take their advice and think about it, and eventually you're in the driver's seat, you need to make the decision. But it's good to always have them as a sounding board. And this is what I said. I think, meeting with investors is never a waste of time. So I met with them on seed round, and then 1 year after I came, hey, you remember you told me that, look what we did in the last 12 months, and okay, we really took on their advice, we already have, significant revenue customers, and then, now we should really, this guy is, when he says something, he executes, and this is what they like to see, they build the trust, and then also understand, if it's like funds, like Viola or Vertex, etc., that they can lead, later rounds, not necessarily the seed. So always good to keep them in the loop, right? But all the angel or the small micro VCs, they won't be able to lead future rounds. So always good, to focus on those at the beginning and try to adjust the right investor to the stage. Right? In our stage right now, it's crossover investors before going public. Right? So you're not going to go to seed round investors. So only to make sure the right stage.
So keep the right ones in the loop and tell them if you have followed through. I'm sure they'll be happy, and maybe it will help you in the next round. Let's go a bit earlier even to how, before each round, how would you estimate the amount that you want to get as an investment, and who would be in the table with you when you think or decide such a decision about the value about it? Yeah.
It's more art than science, I have to admit, because usually the way that investor, or the way I'm thinking about, so as the founder, CEO, you need to be the architect of the round, and once you start a round, your goal, number one goal, is successful. Okay, so always keep it in mind. Sometimes I see a lot of entrepreneurs trying to, not to compromise on valuation, etc. If you'll be good, I can tell you from my own experience, you'll get more equity at the end. So it doesn't matter to optimize on valuations, etc. But to your question, how to build it, so you need to be realistic. What is like a value that you think that investor will pay, and accordingly to try to build the amount, right? What do I mean by that? So if you're, let's call it, 4 million or 5 million revenue business, I can get 10x revenue multiples, so like 50 million, and then, so we are going to raise, usually you give up anywhere from 10 to 25%, maybe early stage, potentially higher, up to 30, not more than that. So like big range. So this is like and this is how investors think. Again, as an LP, I can tell you that, they're looking, like how much we need to invest and how much percentage of holding we're going to have in the company. And usually you need to understand how, and you can ask them, what is your holding expectation, right? Do you want to hold 10%? Then you can have this open discussion, and then you build it. So it's 50 million pre-money, so let's say we want to raise 15 million, right? So then they will get kind of, a bit less than 20%, and then you want to put a place for existing investors, so you only need to architect and then speak with the existing, hey, if there is someone need, would you participate, because usually they have this legal rights, and you need to coordinate between everyone to ensure that. So, but you always need to find the lead, make sure the turn, and then say, if we're at 5 million, reasonable deal will be 15 on 50 million, this is the deal, and then okay, to go and kind of based on that, what is the reasonable valuation, and then to kind of to have the amount in mind. And again, the only tip I can give you is kind of an auction, right? Because you run it like an auction, and if you get someone is really excited, they will give you 60 million. Okay, even if you don't worth it right now, they believe you can grow into it. So if you be able, again, to my insight earlier about getting multiple term sheets in the same week, this is like very, very hard to do. So, but then once you have it, then you can, hey, but this one offered me that, and then sometimes optimize for the right partner, not necessarily the best terms. So, I can tell that we had even better terms in the past, and we decided to go with a bit lower, not something dramatic, but with the right partner. Right? And we're very happy that we did this decision. So how to always think about like the dilution, okay, and therefore try to have a reasonable valuation, to the stage you are right now, and this is the way to say it.
As you said, to architect it, to plan it, it's not only the money or the terms, it's also obviously the investors. Interesting. Now I want to move a bit to the company culture. So you have created, it's time to take some water. Your company has a different structure than I would say kind of common companies, because you also have a large amount of external employees that the people who do the transcription. So please tell us more about the company culture. How do you maintain it through these different arms that you have around the world?
Yeah, so it's for us, my belief, and if there's employees in the crowd, they will agree that culture is strategy for breakfast. And recently we let go one of the C-level after a very short time because of the missed culture fit. And then one of my board asked me, Tom, how you can ensure that you won't hire, wrong C-level. It was really, interesting discussion. But for me, again, I believe that culture is strategy for breakfast, and eventually, a lot of people think that, who the CEO is, this is like reflection of the culture, and I disagree with that. It's more how you live on a day-to-day. And for us, eventually, with Verbit, I can give you what is like our main kind of values that we believe. Like the way I was thinking about that, and again, it's an evolving process all the time. I remember we did a core value exercise when we were 30 people, and we recently revisited and see if it really fits our values and our culture. And I remember, when the early stage, everyone was talking about culture, and it's really, what is culture? It's really a amorphic thing. It's really hard to understand that. And if you're interested, you have to watch a 30-minute video on YouTube of Jeff, the CEO, founder of Twilio, around articulating the core values. When I watch this, I came to, the CEO, founder of Twilio, Jeff, I forgot his last name. It's called Articulating the Core Values. Really interesting 30 minutes video. And then after I saw that, I sent it to our VP HR and told him, hey, I want that. Let's do this process. And he literally gave you very good framework how to think about culture, what is culture, how to define it, how to act on it on a day-to-day, not just post it on the walls, etc. And again, and again, for me, like the best proof point at Verbit was like, okay, I hired the C-level, okay, in 2 months. I let it go because it wasn't a good culture fit. For me going to the board saying I made a huge mistake by hiring this guy. And you don't say that he was not good at that. It's just 2 months. You cannot show that. I felt that I don't trust the guy and I cannot work with him. And So we really walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And and again, like one of our key values is winning together. Okay, as as a company, and this guy was a soloist. He was not a team player, and I saw it immediately, and I said, I cannot live with that. This was the question I asked myself: can I live with that or not? And that's no way. And then just let it go. So this is one, and not. Sorry.
So you recommend to start with, even when you're an early stage startup with just a few employees?
I think around 20 is the right, because if it's like just you and 5 people, so
you and the dog.
It's hard. I think 15, 20 people is the least amount of people, and then okay, so we did it when we were 30, 40 people, and then we were more than 500. We come and revisit them and kind of saw that it's still kind of reflecting it. We shaped it a little bit, and then kind of relaunching it right now.
Thank you very much. And another question, you've gone through the Corona crisis, now this unstable times. What would be your recommendation or your perspective on how to deal with such unstable times?
Cash is the key. Always don't run out of cash. It's something that everyone said. It doesn't matter at each stage. As long as you're not profitable, if you're generating cash, you're in a whole different perspective. But in our world, they expect to grow, and growth comes with investment. So, but make sure you don't run out of cash. This is number one, and luckily for us, we always were fueled with a lot of cash. So every stage of the way, from the seed round to the until now, so it's good for us. But then, try to analyze how this crisis affects you, because the COVID was accelerated to our business, right? Because all the world moved to remote, right? So let's take, for instance, the legal space, right? So their position, so unlike Israel, so in the US, for every civil procedure, the testimonial will be taken outside the court.
Yeah.
Okay, and now there's COVID, no one can come, everything went to Zoom, so digital transformation of many years in really short time, and we were there to capitalize the opportunity. So you need to analyze how this crisis affects your business. Is it, like my friend read Visible, like they were thinking about physical event, okay, the business crashed, in a day, and then, shifted to, so you need to understand how it's really affect your business and to act accordingly. Maybe you need to go to be offensive, like Zoom did, right, with all this virtual meeting, etc. And now when it's more, let's call it financial crisis, right, so, and recession, so again, this is going back to my comment around the stability and the demand for your solutions. So in our case, it's driven by regulation. Okay, so it's easy. So we should think that we're going to be less impacted than others. Right?
And I would like to ask this maybe not so clear question on where do you see, or maybe it is, where do you see Verbit in 5 years' time? I know you have a lot of M&As going on, and also looking at IPO. Where do you see Verbit in 5 years' time?
Yeah, so definitely it's a publicly listed company, either NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, not here in Israel. Maybe 12, but I don't think so. But and again, keep growing the business. If we just crossed the 100 million, it took us 5 years to be 100 million. So if you can be in 5 years 1 billion, this will be amazing achievement. This is at least the North Star. If it will be after 5 years at 800, I'll still be happy. But again, more verticals, more use cases. The beyond transcription. So we'll give you kind of an example of what we are developing. So right now we're focusing on like the voice to text to really make it documented, accessible, etc. But what about building application on top of this data? Right? And I can give an example. So in the legal space, if you transcribe the deposition of the witness that came last week, coming again, you're prescribing his or her deposition, and there's a contradiction, right? Because you have the data, you can build this application of showing this contradiction in real time. It's a real value added to the customer. So what we are doing in each use case is vertical to those customers. Let's dream together. Thing that we can do, we have the best R&D team in the world, we can develop almost everything, right? What is your dream? Okay, we have your data. We can start, running NLP, and use visualization, many stuff with this summarization, a lot of stuff we can do with this data. Well, what is your dream or the best application we can build specific for your needs? And then, okay, so interviewing the customers, I'm just trying to understand how much we would be willing to pay for it, and understanding the addressable market of this specific feature, and then going to R&D, how much time is going to take us to develop, and then, okay, we're putting a real quota, so they will develop it, and then the salespeople will need to sell pennies of the cost of developing, and then you really justify the cost of really developing, and not just trying to make it more empirical, not just hunch.
Yeah. Or you just buy companies.
Yeah. So
sometimes.
Maybe I'll give two words about the roll-up strategy, which is it's really rare to find such a unique opportunity like we have. So there are, just for you to understand, more than 5,000 traditional manual transcription companies. So let's think about our conversation right now, right? I'm talking a lot here. If you want, some of you taking notes, etc., but let's say you want to get a transcript of this meeting, like verbatim, word by word of what I just said. If you go to a traditional manual, one of those 5,000 companies, the way they do it, they just sit and type it from scratch, and it's getting the capacity of scale, no gross margin, implicit accuracy, and all the problems you have with manual processes, right? And the way that we have in our database, there's a meet here that built this database of 1,400 companies with aggregate revenue of $1.7 billion, right? For now, it's just the corp that M&A can just go buy them, integrate them, and we see it as a customer acquisition engine for us, because the teasers there that we buy them 1x revenue, and I can tell you that I wish that our sales and marketing of every dollar we pay, we bring $1 of revenue. I wish it would be there. Like only the top company really managed to be there. So, but for us, if you pay $1x revenue multiple, you just see it as a customer acquisition, and then usually their gross margin or their free cash flow is really minimal, and then we take their customer base, bring it to our platform, and there's a lot of automation. Right? So much more free cash flow. If their gross margin is 25%, our gross margin is 70%. So from the same customer, creating a lot of free cash flow and growing them, because it's a usage-based model. Our business model is usage-based, which means revenue is equal number of audio minutes transcribed multiplied by the price per minute. So price per minute is something we set. So then the main value metric is how many audio minutes we can transcribe, and once you see those manual companies, it's flat and not growing because they don't have capacity.
So they have a ceiling, and basically when you're purchasing them, you're able to give the customers additional work.
More usage. They can, for instance, Harvard, before they worked with Verbit.
Small customer, Harvard.
They worked with 4 different local vendors in Boston, because none of them could reach the scale. And then it's like cloud, unlimited scale. So it was really powerful for them. And then you have, one-stop shop. You have the real-time product, you have post-production, you have audio description, you have many kind of complementary solutions. So then you upsell them and gain a lot more market share. So for us, again, going back to this is another growth engine. And again, why investors really like organic growth? Because it's predictable and repeatable, right? So you build a funnel, right? This is my pipeline. I know what is the conversion rate from each stage in the pipeline to be a paying customer. I know what is the average deal size on each customer that I'm paying, I want to acquire. And then we know how long is the sales cycle, right? And then you know how much is the sales and marketing cost. You can calculate the payback time when you actually return the money you invest in sales and marketing for the customer, right? And same is in our case in the inorganic. So we have a pipeline of the 1,400 companies I told you. It takes us 2 months to close a deal. Once we see a company, we know what is the size of the company. So it's similar to the check size. So we know how much we're paying. So we know how to calculate it, and we managed to convince investor that this is like a very strong, legit growth engine. That okay, we have an arbitrage because we are getting the value of a software company and buying those companies in manual kind of running strategy, and how you do the magic, transforming it $1 service multiple to software multiple. But once you integrate, you saw all the synergies I just mentioned. You really convince them it's repeatable, predictable, and they give you the credit.
And I think from what I'm taking from what you're saying is obviously this is not a copy-paste solution. This is something that each of you can try to see how it fits to your industry and economic opportunities.
Yeah, but sometimes because this model now, I start to get a lot of interest from founders. Yeah, I wanted to do the Verbit model, start acquiring it. I meet happily always to meet those founders. But sometimes you see they're trying to kind of, to make it, also in the way that it will fit, that it doesn't fit, right? It's really hard, it cannot fit to. Usually it's where you have a fragmented manual market that automation and technology can fit into it, so then you really just buy those manual companies as a customer. Another good company that did it was Frauduro, but with not real technology integrations more wrong.
Last question for me, and then we're going to move to your questions. Maybe it's a bit corny question, but what would you say, Tom, 6 years ago? What thing that you know now that you didn't know back then?
Wow, so
Just only two. Yeah.
I think it's if you say, yeah, you're going to be a founder, CEO of a $2 billion market cap company, and you really manage it, and people think you're successful in it, and like you and admire you, you're crazy, right? Like, so kind of the managerial skills of like me and my co-founder sitting there and kind of running, more than 1,000 people, employees, right? So it's really kind of different. But also the good things that, I see a lot of founders that, kind of, like what's really not staying humble and kind of things that are beyond. I always try to, founder to founder. I've been in your shoes, and I remember those days. Those are the hardest days and the early days. I'm not, above you in any way. I just had more luck in a way. So it's always important to stay humble. But then I tried to think about another thing. You said two things. I gave one around kind of like let's call it the managerial skills and how it's developed. And I think, the culture, and not just the culture, also about, doing this M&A. I remember that at the beginning of the journey, I was like so excited about like the offers that we got to be acquired, etc. Now to be in the other shoes of acquiring companies and doing deals, I think it's an amazing experience that I get. But going back to the culture thing, I would never imagine how important it is to create this kind of culture, that it's every organization, there's their own unique culture, right? Like Verbit, we have our own, Weeds, they have their own, Wix, they have their own. So, every company is different, and really kind of be able to create something that's unique and be able to articulate it and make sure it's not like what you just think, it's really what the people believe, how important it is to be for the success of the company. Because I said, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is my own belief, so how critical it is. And how a lot of influence us as entrepreneurs and founders have on the culture.
So build a good and relevant culture and stay humble. So let's give it a round of applause. And now over to you guys. Who wants to ask a question?
so boring.
I don't know where to start.
Yes, please. Sorry, what is your name? Svetlana. Hi.
Thank you very much for your speech. It's really inspiring. I'm trying also to build my startup, and my question is: so if you see your idea is quite big and bold, and the thing that you want to start with is a bit, not going to the big idea, but this idea will bring you money first at the first stages you advise. So, what would your recommendation be? Just to build this small part, it brings money, and then go to the big, bold idea.
So I'll just repeat that to make sure everybody heard. So she said, Svetlana said that if you have a big and bold ambitions, but you want to start with something smaller, make sure it works, and then move on, what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I don't know if you got it.
No,
Yeah.
I think actually, so to answer your question, the way I would do, first of all, our goal as founders and CEO is like storytelling. Okay, so you always start with a huge grand vision. Okay, textualizing the world's voice. Okay, this is our like something really bold, and this is the huge vision. This is how we and really believe in it, right? If you kind of apologizing and saying that, it will be hard for you. You need to really be passionate and believe when you say that. But they say, okay, this is like the very grand vision, but as a first step to reach to this vision, this is like the idea we're going to do, this is how we're going to generate money, this is like the first milestone, and then this is the second milestone, and then kind of laying out the whole picture on how you're going to execute this big, large vision, right? So, okay, this is like North Star, this is where we want to be, this is like the big idea, as you call it, right? This is why I'm so excited about it, this is why I believe we are the right team to do it. But every grand vision starts with like first, as you call it, POC or kind of proof point you need to make, and we need this money to prove that. Once we prove this is the milestone we want to reach, this is how we think on how to execute the vision, and this is like the path, the plan to do so. So you always need to start with the big vision, the big picture, etc., and then to more be on the ground and how to reach there with the, how you call it, more smaller. I hope it's helpful.
But big vision will not bring the money immediately.
No, but like they need to be inspired on where you want to go. Okay, so they need to think that investor eventually they are betting their career on you. Okay, there are many startups to invest. I need to choose the one that will return the most money, and kind of like, okay, I'm betting that you're the one that will do it, and if I was right, I'll be really successful in my goal. This is how they think about it. So they need to fall in love with this big vision. They all understand, this big vision needs to start somewhere, and then to really lay out the plan on how to reach there, where you want to start, and why it's interesting.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have some question in the back, I think.
This one?
Yes. And your
We need to
name?
stand. Sorry?
What is your name?
Ben Ron Manoa. שם הכי קשה.
Billboard.
Yeah. I'm going to try and choose the one that I hope will be valuable for everybody here. Regarding the investors that you spoke of, for a given round, would you prefer to go with one specific investor, one specific company, a VC, or if you're going for a specific round, should I close with multiple, if that's even possible? And maybe a second part of that question is, how soon should you begin to raise the next round? So if I have already the seed, when should I go for round A? Because you said always have money. When should I start the next round?
I give you the secret, you always need to fundraise, okay?
Okay.
So,
So never stop.
So, and again, but the way I'm trying to do so to your question about should we do it one or two, again, it's really depends, right? How, if they know how to work together, do they both want the board seat, right? So there's a lot of kind of consideration you need to go. And the fact that they will want to work together, right? So there's a lot of harmony. Usually, the way we did it, we had one big lead, and then the existing joined. This is like usually the best practice from what I saw. but you know, I see many things. So then, you know, and again, to your point, what I did twice, and it turns out to be a very smart move. So kind of giving like those who want to have one major lead, they will take the board seat. But those who want to participate and kind of was a bit late, etc., to say, okay, I'll give you a small check, you know, let's start building the relationship, and then and your question around when should have the next round is like the best round is when they are preempt, right? You don't actually fundraise. They say, look, I don't care that you're, not at 10 million revenue, that you justify the 100 million. If we go stick to the 10x revenue multiple, you're just at 7. We're willing to preempt and give you the valuation you want right now because we believe blah blah blah. So those are the best rounds. So what we did twice, both with Sapphire and Third Point. So Sapphire joined, to our D round, to our C round, very, at the last minute, like put the small checks, and then they saw the performance of the business, and they said, hey, we want to lead the Series D. Okay, and then they came with an offer. It was so good that we said, yeah, let's just accept this offer. Same happened with Third Point for the Series E, so they put a small check in the Series D, and then they saw the performance of the business, and then had the
But isn't it dangerous to raise with a too high of a valuation?
Of course it is, but again, if you have smart investors, they're not like, okay, as I said, I don't think that, don't quote me here, but like the Verbit right now, right? Based on the market multiples, etc., we're worth $2 billion. Okay, does it matter to anyone? No, because they believe that next year we're going to be more than 200 million in revenue, and then obviously justified. Yeah, so we managed to time the market correct. It doesn't affect it. We don't need to do any down run or something like this. But even we do just a bump in the road is part of the journey, right? I don't think it should be any. But because I see a lot of my friends found that they raised, at 500 million valuation and 5 million revenue. They burn all the money. How we can justify the valuation? They will sure we need to have a down run, and it's not the end of the world, right? Like back then, people were giving 100x revenue. They did all. Okay, this is, like when the Fed printed $4 trillion in COVID, but also they're all going to tech, they're doing the digital transformation, and we were there to get this money. Okay, so now we're, have hundreds of millions of dollars in the balance sheet and can do big, bold moves to acquire companies, etc. So this gives us this flexibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, please. And your name?
Emmanuel. I've read in books and articles that a good base amount of like potential users or people that are interested in your platform or whatever you're building is like 10 to 12 people. That kind of sounds a little low to me. What is your experience of like a entrepreneur comes and says, look, we have some interest. What's like a base minimum number of people interested in what you're building to show like any sort of realization of what you're building?
I think we need to shape a little bit the question, not like people are interested, to customers, right? Because eventually, if customers will buy, the investor will buy, everything will be much easier. So I would say customers, and in our case, it was so easy because we knew that, the demand for prescription is there, right? We're not inventing like, okay, my friends at Gronk, okay, they invented a whole new category, okay, about this revenue intelligence, etc. And they, Amit and Elon, they went to speak with 50 potential customers to interview them, etc. And then they, there's and they also came, Amit, the founder CEO was, CMO, CRO in the past, so he knew that the problem firsthand, that he needed this product himself and went to invent it. So, so my number would be around, a bit more than 10 to 12, more to like 30, and up to make sure, and then try to get, understand who you're speaking with the organization, right? If sometimes you speak with the CEO, and sometimes the HR, it's a different, right? So try to make sure you're speaking with the person you're selling, either that it will be a buyer, and then try to kind of like speak with as many as you can. Because, as I said, to be an entrepreneur is not a rational decision, right? Like for me, it was easy because the alternative cost was nothing. To get 10,000 shekels in Mitek was like I had nothing to lose, right? So, but if you have, you're a banker or a lawyer, or a partner in the Shimolet or something, to live to, we had someone in the audience that was a partner in a big law firm and went to the entrepreneur. So then you're really giving up on something, right? So you want to make sure once you do it, you're doing for something with huge potential, right? So in our case, it was much easier because it's an existing market that's been done manually, and we are bringing innovation and technology and disrupting it. So we had much more confidence in the addressable market, right? Because eventually, to convince investors, they want to make sure that the market is big enough so they can have their own returns. You always need to remember that a lot of companies that I see, they're great businesses, not necessarily great funding opportunity for VCs. Right? They have different business models. You need to understand. For me as an LP and a $100 million fund, they need to return at least $300 million. And then think that they have on average 20%, so they need to have $1.5 billion taxes, right? Just to own 100 million funds. So they need to understand who are those bets or those companies that can really generate those kind of returns. Although your business could be an amazing business, but not potentially be in those heights. So once you go to those VCs, you always need to keep it in mind. But again, as long as you speak with more customers, you get more validation, you get more confidence, and then potential, customer in the future or reference for the investors that you want to bring to fund your companies to say, hey, I spoke with this, and this. You should use it as a reference that once you give me your money to build the product, they will buy it, right? So as long as you have more.
By the way, you mentioned Gong, and next month we're going to interview Amit from Gong. Yes, we're going to interview him on the 19th of September, so that's actually the next event.
You have to go.
You have to go. Tom, thank you very much. It's been so interesting and insightful. Unless we have more last question. Yes, please.
Yes.
And your name, please.
Yaron.
Yaron.
Yes. You approach so many investors. Do you use a cold approach, or always you take care of having some acquaintance introduced?
So the question when I spoke with almost all the investors in Israel, was it a cold email or a warm introduction? So I give you the anecdote. The short answer is always warm recommendation. Is what I did. But just give you as an anecdote. So you were a single guy. You went down the street and you saw an amazing woman that you want to hit on her, right? So then, if you just go, okay, and try your luck, maybe yes, maybe no. Okay, but if her best friend would say, look, this guy, he was a Tayas, he was a pilot and tell amazing things, what do you think the likelihood would be, to have a successful day? Much more likely when you get this warm intro. This is the same with investments, right? So if you get, you tell me, okay, Tom, I want to speak with the guys from Vertex, and I said, look, this guy Yaron is amazing, and you have to see his company. He's talking with many, many other investors. You need to hurry up. I did 50% of the work. Just need to go there and not to blow it up, right? So, and so to your question, always with more interest.
And one more?
Please, and your name?
Danny.
Danny. Danny.
While you still sharpen your big vision and the solution, go to market, strategy, everything, would you recommend go and speak, get an advice from potential investors, get them in the loop, or just kinda not burn them,
It depends how. So the question is, while you're still evaluating
And
your
preparing to go to
yourself.
round, like also preparing to go to round. Like,
So I think, I'll divide it. For you as a repeat entrepreneur, it will be different than, first time entrepreneur. Because you have relationship with those investors. So let's say, if one day I will do my another company, right? So then I will have the privilege to go and speak with everyone and get the feedback, right? So it won't be the same answer for the first timer that don't have those relationship with them. So if it's like you don't have a warm relationship, I will wait when you're more crisp. It's better to go to practice with other fellows entrepreneurs, right? And then once you go to investors, then come more sharp, more kind of with confidence. It's much more important to come sharp. But if you have warm relationship, so then you speak with them as friends. So it's different.
And your name? And you can speak louder.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Maria, and my question is your relationship with the investors. It's, what's your relationship with them? They demand every day reports, or
How to manage the relation? How do you manage the relationship with investors?
So again,
yeah, after they invest in
Yeah.
you, they want to know what.
So I'll divide it. The beginning, again, for me, the investor, I saw them, it's like sometimes people get confused. It's not you against the investor. You're the shareholders in your company. We're in it together, right? We want to win together, okay? It's critical. So once you treat them as your colleagues and you have a shared goal, okay, think about they gave you money, and now they're going and saying everyone how amazing you are and how amazing your company because they want their investment to be successful. So it's really critical to make sure the relationship is this way. Eventually, there is a cadence of like board meetings once a quarter, and then usually you build the agenda for the board meeting, and then you share the board deck with the investors. At least right now in more a growth stage, okay, you have quarterly kind of like every public company earnings, etc. So once a quarter, you have all the financial information, all the strategic discussion over there, and we just share it with not just the board, with all the shareholders, because sometimes there are shareholders with no representative at the board. Okay, so you share it with them. But more early that you need to be more hands-on. So it depends on like the cadence you set. So I found a valuable use of my time to meet with my investor at the early stage once a week, because they build and invest in many companies, so they saw many of the problems that I'm facing many times. So I kind of like, hey, well, we should do this, etc. So it's not like they're my boss, so it's more as kind of a partner to the journey, and then kind of like, for me, my personal kind of style is very curious, right? So all the time, ask questions, to listen to the podcast, see other portfolio companies and they're successful, what works for them, can you connect me with this guy? So kind of being proactive to use them, right? So kind of like, don't try to be reactive that they will, send me this report, blah, blah, and create this kind of, weird relationship. So for me, if you're like a real entrepreneur and all the time initiating things, they will like it and will help you to build a company. So I would treat it a bit differently, and also setting expectation. Let's say, once they invested, okay, well, what do you use to have from other companies? Let's build it together. Okay, like, what is the kind of key KPIs you want to see? Let's keep track of it. Also for us as a company to see the progress and share it with them. And again, like the most important thing is maintaining the trust, right? So if they invested in you, it means they trust you. But if they find you are manipulating the numbers or so, and they saw everything, not in Verbit, just in other companies, but you're going to lose the trust really quickly, and you're done. So it's really important not to play with trust with the investors.
And you felt like sometimes they, after after a quarter, they making calls for the company. They tell you have to do this.
No, so this is your role as, so the question was once a quarter, or like do you feel that the investors or the board making decision for you? So like it's really depends how strong is you as the CEO and then founder. I can tell you in our case that, you know, was never any, also the board saying, hey guys, we just here to kind of give you feedbacks and when you're taking decisions, etc., to kind of like give you the mirror of the way we see it. And don't, like if you're in a situation that the company needs to be managed by the board, it means that, you know, it's really bad situation. So you need to be the leader of the company, make the decision, always bring data or rationale to support. So we want to choose this strategy because, or those are the alternatives, right? This is the recommendation, this is why. Okay, like this is usually how you build those kind of board discussions, and yeah, you need to be really confident, and this is the direction. And yeah, you want to hear, you know, other perspective on why it could fail, what could go wrong, etc. But you know, you need to be the leader. If you think they will do decision, you're in a really bad situation.
Good. So I guess we're still here. Maybe like one more question, and then probably reach you. Two more? Yeah, Tom said two more. Yes, please, your name? Yes.
Sarah.
Sarah.
I wanted to ask if you have a daily routine, or like how do you manage your schedule? If you have anything special during the day that you must have, like must-have meetings or access to, like your daily routine as a person that his time is very valuable.
So I'll just share it for everybody here. So Sarah asked a great question. If you have any daily routine that helps you manage your very busy.
So there is priorities, right? Number one priority is Haley, my daughter, is not every morning with her in our pool. It's really nice. And then if there's Maccabi Haifa matches,
You just with them in therapy. You were just with them, right?
This is number two. And then very good. So
Young Kadeshaka will be very proud now.
sitting 4 chairs near me every Saturday. But the way I like to manage my time, let's call it time management kind of thing. So I'm trying to say, okay, I want to spend, you know, 20% of my time with one-on-ones, okay, like direct reports and kind of have structure for the meetings. You know, I'll call it not a daily routine or more a weekly routine, right? Because once it's such a big companies, it's not like every day is different. So let's call it one-to-one with the direct reports and management. This is critical, right? Then you want to invest, let's call it 10-15% of your time with existing investor and new investors, right? So kind of like in existing, it's like the board, you need to have communication with the board, and again, you know, if we want to buy a company, so you need to make sure you're building the coalition. So for me, the number one rule, as also kind of the chairman of the board, the one managing the board, not just, so it's around the, not just the management, it's one team, the board is another team, and treating it as a team, so like board management and investors and new investors, again, like 15 to 20% of my time. Then it's more around strategy, right? Like where we need to go, what is our planning for, you know, for next year, long-term planning, next quarter, you know, sometimes it's quarterly business review, sometimes it's about the companies we want to acquire, pipeline of companies where to focus and be, and sometimes I still do need to go and you know, meet customers, meet those potential, you know, owner of those companies to be convinced, you know, why 37 years old kid, you know, they're 60, want to buy this company, want to take it public, to really see you and believe in your vision, etc. So yeah, and like being there with the, we have many sites, so you need to go and visit the site. So, you know, there's always kind of, you know, different focus, right? Because if right now we're doing a strategic deal, so how to make sure we are thinking about the integration correctly, etc. So let's call it strategy and related stuff. It's like 30%. of my time, and then hiring, right? So all the time, sometimes, if you don't always hire C-level, but sometimes those C-level hire VPs or directors that are super critical, and they want you to meet with them to convince them to join. Like I said, you have to meet our founders, he will convince you to join. So I still spending a lot of time, hiring and building the team, and then, it's ended up more than 100%.
Hi, my name is Matan, and I have a question about, for you as a founder and also as an MP, like you mentioned. Why do you think it's a general consensus this time that people will still clear from B2Cs? Like, no one is recommending you shouldn't go to B2C, only focus on business to businesses, and you shouldn't focus on customers like the general public. And how should one better the chances of B2C also?
So Matan asked, why would LPs lean more towards B2B rather than B2C, at least in Israel?
So let's just give you an example of companies of my friends, Lightrix. Okay, so I guess most of you are familiar with Lightrix, very successful B2C startup. But now when there is a recession and then you're thinking about the consumer spending, where do you think is the mission critical or must have, or where are they going to reduce the spending? Exactly in those places that are not must. Maybe there's Instagrammers or whatever, they have to have it, but and this is more kind of as a business, right? That it's really not like as the individual. So I think the risk that involved with more B2B investment is less than B2C, and when it's such a volatile environment and not stable environment like we have right now, so the investors always prefer what they know, what is less riskier, which is B2B. So, but again, just to give you some, we are now at Verbit, entering to B2C, right? So right now we're more around, enterprise, high end, but we're getting a lot of demand from, those small customers that won't take this lecture and transcribe it. Today they go to the Verbit website, they don't have even the opportunity. Right, so we are doing actually an opposite move to what you're saying in this environment. So, but I gave you the framework on how as LP or the GPs in those kinds of things. I think this is a broader issue around the risk tolerance from their perspective. But sometimes as an entrepreneur, you need to do bold moves, as we do right now, to go more down market, more to B2C. Because I think it should be interesting growth engine. Once you're such a late stage and you need to show growth, so every dollar counts, and to remain at really high growth numbers like 40-50% up, 50% growth year over year, you need to have growth engines. So all the time when I speak with the team, it's also part of what is our growth engine? Because we divided our business into business units, and make sure there's a growth engine for every business unit and why and how to drive it. So.
And it's a $30 billion industry,
Yes.
so there's still room to
Yeah,
grow.
but still hard to grow.
Yes. Fantastic. So again, thank you all. I really thank you for all your questions, and most importantly, thank you so much, Tom. Not only for the great insights, but also for really your openness and your humbleness. And it was a great pleasure for me and for everyone here. So thank you so much.